My name is Fernanda, and together with Oscar and Zachary, we are going to present the strategic analysis of Chile, focusing on its energy situations, key trends, and future opportunities. So this graph shows Chile's energy consumption by source in absolute terms, measured in terawatts. And historically, Chile has relied heavily on fossil fuels, such as oil and natural gas, which have been the primary energy sources for the country. However, over the last decade, we can see a significant increase um, in the consumption of renewable energy, particularly solar and wind power. This is like largely due to the country's geographical advantages and government policies aimed at reducing dependence on fossil fuels. Despite the growth in renewables, fossil fuels continue to play a major role in meeting the country's energy demands. So in the next graph, thank you. Here we have a similar view of Chile's energy consumption mix, but it expressed as percentages. So over time, the share of renewable energy sources has gradually increased, particularly solar and wind energy, which now make up like a significant portion of the country's energy mix. The graph shows a steady decline. The last one also this, like in the percentage of energy consumption coming from coal and oil as the government pursues its decarbonization goals. So natural gas still accounts for a considerable percentage that reflects like Chile's dependence on imported fuels to meet its industrial and residential needs. So here we have the consumption per person. Chile's energy consumption per capita has been increasingly steadily driven by economic growth and expansion of energy access, especially in urban areas. The mining sector, which is a major part of Chile's economy, is the largest energy consumer, using significant amount for copper extraction and processing. And additionally, the transport sector heavily relies on oil derivatives such as gasoline and diesel to meet like the fuel demands. So this reliance on fossil fuels like highlights the challenges for Chile in the transition for a cleaner energy system. So here, when we look like at the distribution of energy use across industry, mining is by far the largest consumer, accounting for about like 1/3 of Chile's total energy consumption. This is followed by transport sector and residential, which is like heavily dependent on oil. Also, the manufacturing sector consumes like a considerable amount of energy, particularly like in industries such as cement and food production. And in the other hand, like the residential side, like the electricity consumption has been rising as more households adopt electric appliances and heating systems. So this industry like play a key role in shaping Chile's energy policy and its effort toward greater sustainability.
So moving on to the domestic energy production in Chile. So above are some of the visuals of how the production of energy looks like, with the bottom showing an illustration of the proportion of materials used for domestic energy production in 2023. The bottom graph also shows biofuels and waste being the largest resource for domestic energy production. So as shown from the graph on the left, biofuels and waste have been consistently the largest source of energy production in Chile, with a whopping 332,780 terajoules of energy being produced in 2023. There has been consistent efforts to reduce the production of non-renewable sources, as shown from the decrease in energy production in coal, crude oil, and natural gases. However, this is due to them largely being imported and Chile being heavily reliant on these energy imports, which my colleague Oscar will share more about it later in the slides. So fortunately, there has been a rise in the use of renewable energy resources since 2015, which shows that there are consistent efforts to tackle a sustainable approach to producing energy in Chile. So moving on to electricity energy production in Chile, above are some visuals as shown of how the production of electricity looks like, with the bottom showing an illustration of the proportion of materials used for domestic electricity production in 2023, with hydropower being the largest resource of domestic electricity production. So we also have to bear in mind that electricity production tends to closely match with the country's demand for it, which in turn drives economic growth. As shown from the graphs, electricity production tends to stem from renewable sources of energy, with hydro, solar, and wind being the bulk generator of electricity. It shows that Chile is opting for a more sustainable approach to generating electricity, which is also evident in the drop in coal, natural gases, and crude oil since 2010. So from the visual on the right, this is the territorial distribution of the largest infrastructure projects of the fossil fuel sector in Chile. The coal reserves amount to more than 80% of the energy production, the energy potential of mineral resources. The main coal extraction fields are located in the central part and in the south part of the country, in the Biblio region, Los Rios, and Magallanes, with the largest coal extraction fields located at Catamutun and Mina Inverno. There are three types of oil pipelines that connect the oil fields with the major refineries, being pipelines for crude oil, pipelines for transportation of petroleum products, and pipelines for gas condensate. Chilean refineries process about 61.9 million barrels of oil annually, with the key oil terminals being at Bahia San Vicente. Major storage facilities are concentrated in the central part and the southern part of the country as well, and have a total capacity of 22 million barrels of oil. Natural gas processing plants are also concentrated in the central part of the country. Pamukko Natural Gas Processing Plant being installed and having the capacity of 600,000 meter cubes per day. It can also be doubled depending on the demand. So moving on to electricity production, this visual shows the most important facilities in Chile producing electrical energy. There are 4 electrical grids in Chile with a total installed capacity of 22,031 megawatts. The share of fossil fuels in electricity production in 2022 was about 43.4%. Approximately 25.3% comes from hydropower and 31.3% from other renewable energy sources. For fossil fuels, the power generation is carried out mainly by coal, 40%, and hydrocarbons. The country has a significant generating capacity, including some very large facilities, which includes 6 coal plants with a capacity of more than 300 megawatts, 6 combined power plants with a capacity of more than 200 megawatts, and 6 oil plants which have a capacity of over 120 megawatts as shown. The largest coal-fired plant in Ventanas with a capacity of more than 885 megawatts, the largest oil being at Tautau, having a capacity of 240 megawatts, and the leader being combined power plants at Tocopilla with a capacity of more than 1 gigawatt, and the largest gas plant in Atacama with an installed capacity of 780 megawatts. So finally, for renewable energy, there are about 114 hydroelectric power plants in Chile, the largest of which is in Rauco with a capacity of 690 megawatts. Renewable energy in Chile becomes more and more important for the production of main types of these types of energy. Thus, the total production of electricity in 2022 from renewable sources, with the exception of hydropower, was about 29.87 terawatts hour and was dominated by solar energy. So bioenergy has also been actively developing in Chile with its capacity estimated at 473 megawatts in 2017. And nationwide, there are enterprises for processing biomass, biogas pellets, and landfill gas. So the level of solar radiation in the central and northern parts of the country can also reach up to 9.5 kilowatt hour per meter square per day, and the wind speed exceeds more than 8.5 meters per second, which proves that it's a tangible resource for energy production. So as a consequence, there is a large number of renewable energy facilities located in the area. The largest station being at El Romero with an installed capacity of 246 megawatts, and the largest wind park being at Cabo Leons, which with a capacity of 319.5 megawatts. So this is one of the most promising areas of development for Chile, concentrating solar power technologies within the northern region of Chile, and several stations are in development and construction stage.
Okay, so starting with energy imports, we see that Chile is highly dependent on external sources for its energy needs. The largest import is oil, with 728 petajoules making up 60% of the total imports. This is followed by coal, which accounts for 23%, and finally gas at 15%. A key factor here is Chile's lack of domestic oil production, making it heavily reliant on imports from countries like Brazil and the US. Moving on to exports, Chile's energy exports are on a much smaller scale. Oil dominates with 95% of energy exports, though the total volume is only 37 petajoules. Coal makes up the remaining 5% of exports, with just 2 petajoules being sent out of the country. This is largely because Chile's domestic coal production is not extensive enough to support large-scale exports. Now let's discuss some of the key factors driving the trade pattern. Chile imports natural gas primarily from Argentina, but fluctuating supply and changing policies in Argentina have caused some instability. Additionally, Chile's energy consumption is heavily impacted by its copper mining industry, one of the largest in the world, which is driving high demand for energy. Next slide. Chile's global share of CO2 emissions stands at just 0.8%, and between 2000 and 2020, its emissions have grown 78%, showing the impact of industrial and economic growth. In 2022, the per capita CO2 emissions were 4.9 metric tons, which is slightly higher than the global average of 4.7. While emissions have been increasing over the past few decades, recent years have shown signs of slowing growth as Chile implements cleaner energy practices. A key factor driving emissions is the transport sector, which contributes around 37% of total emissions. This dominance is due to Chile's limited rail infrastructure and growing vehicle ownership. Energy production also plays a significant role in Chile's carbon footprint. 61% of emissions come from oil, followed by coal at 24.8 and natural gas at 14. Chile's copper production, which is highly energy intensive, and its need for heating is in colder climates further drives its relative high per capita emissions. However, we are starting to see improvements. The share of emissions from electricity and heat producers has been decreasing in recent years, reflecting Chile's transition to renewable energy sources. As of 2022, 55.3% of Chile's electricity generation came from renewables, and over the past 2 decades, this share has increased nearly fivefold. Let's break down some of the key initiatives that will drive this growth further. First, Chile claims to be a global leader in green hydrogen production. By 2030, the country hopes to produce greener hydrogen at a cost of about $1.5 per kilogram, capitalizing on its abundant renewable resource. Chile also plans to be a major export targeting Europe and Asia. Chile is also developing heavily in solar energy. The Atacama Desert, with with some of the world's highest solar radiation levels, is a prime location for solar power. One prominent project combines a concentrated solar panel with photovoltaic technology to provide continuous electricity, making Chile a global solar energy hub. In addition to solar, Chile is expanding wind energy production, especially in the Magallanes area, which boasts strong wind resources. Investments in grid modernization will allow the country to integrate more wind energy, enhancing grid reliability. Finally, Chile is committed to decarbonization of its energy sector. The country plans to phase out coal-fired power plants by 2040 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, focusing on expanding renewables. In conclusion, Chile's future energy landscape is set to be dominated by renewables, with significant advancements in green, hydrogen, solar, and wind energy, all contributing to its climate goals.
So to conclude, let's look at Chile's energy situation through a SWOT analysis. In the strength, Chile has exceptional solar and wind energy resources, positioning it as a leader in renewable energy in Latin America. The government's strong commitment to decarbonization, including the phase out of coal by 2040, is another strength. In opportunities, the development of green hydrogen presents a major opportunity for Chile to become a global exporter in this emerging market. Chile also has the potential to increase energy export to neighboring countries as its renewable capacity grows. Weaknesses, Chile's dependence on imported fossil fuels, particularly natural gas, is a significant weakness. This reliance makes the country vulnerable to price fluctuation in global energy markets. And finally, threats. Chile is exposed to climate-related risks such as drought, which can severely impact hydropower production. The country is also vulnerable to natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis, which pose risks to its energy infrastructure.
All right, that's the end. Thanks.